Take your Bibles, please, and turn to Romans chapter 12. Romans 12, as they change the microphones, I think, on this. And we do appreciate Brother Jimmy and his faithfulness during these last couple of months in working the sound system and learning a new device back there with the everything. We appreciate that very much. Romans chapter 12. We're finishing tonight. We began last Wednesday night. We had it. This is everything's on here. There you go. That's what happens. There you go. Thank you, brother. And so we began this last Wednesday night, and then we dealt with it in Sunday school, and then tonight we're going to finish it. This coming Sunday, by the way, in Sunday school, don't forget the ladies' class kicks back off again, and that'll be in the fellowship hall, and the auditorium class will be in here. Romans chapter 12 and verse 18, if it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. We talked the last couple of sessions and are talking about this, about how to live at peace with people and trying to keep relationships without just discarding them because you're having challenges with them. Just a quick review. We're going to read through the review just to refresh our memory. We talked about the truth that we must remember, and that is, I have no responsibility where I have no authority. This is inside your prayer list, okay? I have no responsibility where I have no authority, where I have no responsibility. Authority and responsibility go in the same place. Now, it doesn't mean I don't have a burden. I do have burdens. I have responsibility to do my part, but I can't take responsibility for other people's choices. Because if I do, I become a manipulator. I try to manipulate people to do what I want them to do, as opposed to them choosing to do what God wants them to do with their life. And that's the truth we need to start with. Then the reality we must face, first of all, I cannot change the actions of others choose. I can't make people change. Second, I can't change the feelings of other people. And nor can I change the faith others choose. So I can't make somebody believe something. I can't make somebody feel something. I can't make somebody do something. That doesn't alleviate me of responsibility to try to be an influencer, to be a conveyor of truth, and try to solve the problem, help move them forward. But if I don't accept this reality, then my efforts will be humanistic in nature and not biblical in focus. The danger we must avoid is this: the danger of deception, the danger of accommodation and compromise, and the danger of impatience. These are three things we talked about during our study of things that causes us to be, because of these things, if we fall into those, we can wind up making things worse. And then the prerequisite, there has to be an absence of a guilty conscience. If I have a guilty conscience, I am going to find it very difficult to be at peace with somebody else. And second of all, I must make sure I accept the character of God as the basis of my confidence. Because if I don't do that, I'm going to wind up trying to make other people my sufficiency. A lot of times in marriages, the reason why there's such conflict, and even in churches, is because we look to each other to meet the needs that only God can meet in our lives. If you are trying to have your wife or husband or son or daughter or friend or career meet the need in your heart that only God can meet, you're going to be perpetually dissatisfied with that. We talked about that a couple earlier. Then we talked about specific ways or situations we must deal with. First of all, we dealt with the peace with people who walk away. We talked about the prodigal son and the prodigal son's father. How in that narrative, you have to define the responsibility. You don't subsidize the sin. You wait, pray, and look for genuine change. And you follow the pattern of restoration. We dealt with that earlier in our study. Then we talked about facing the peace with people who are not in sync with you. That was from the book of Acts, by the way, chapter number 6. And we had to go back to where the relationship was last right. And then we need to make a plan to restore the relationship. Remember, we mentioned that every solution to relational problems, has three characteristics. It must be understandable, it must be workable, and it must be sustainable, all from Acts chapter 6, verses 3 and 4. And then we talked about how there needs to be peace with people who have done wrong toward you. And we talked about the need for praise, to exercise your rights when it advances the will of God. Giving up your rights when it advances the will of God, and then seeking what is best for the offender. We talked about that last week. Now, if you're interested in any of these, and you were not here for any of the sessions, you can go on our website, to the Facebook or the YouTube, and look back and find them the last 2 weeks. It was last Sunday morning in Sunday school and last Wednesday night. Now, tonight, with that review setting up, we're going to deal with two more, the last two, of our challenges in dealing with people that we are trying to have peace with. Take your Bibles and turn to Matthew chapter 5, okay? I have a question. Have you ever had anybody get mad at you? You say, well, preacher, let's see, at 4 today. Ever get people get mad at you? When people get mad at you, how might they express that anger? When your friends get mad at you, or if you're married, well, maybe not that way. It might be too personal. But how do people sometimes show you they're mad at you? Somebody just raise your hand. Yes. Volume. Yes. They get loud. What else? They're mad at you. Silence. The other end. Okay. What else if they're mad at you? What might they do? Well, that's true. Not if they're Italian, they would never do that. But yes, they might slam things. What else might they do if they're mad at you? Blame you, exactly. It's got to be your fault. It can't be my fault, right? Not my fault. If you're mad at me, that's your problem. I'm fine with what I did. Yeah. That was pretty specific. What kind of car would they be riding in? No, we won't go there. Okay. I'm just kidding. All right. Let's go ahead and start now. Have thine own. No, okay. All right. So anyhow, but isn't it true? Okay. The story I told you before. Okay. I know, but remember that story I told you about Karen. We had these two small kids, and I don't know about small kids, but they're just a pain. You know, small kids. You like them. You might even love them, but they're a pain. They just suck all the oxygen out of the room, don't they? They do. That's why when you get older, you want to leave home. That's why so you can breathe. But anyhow, so I remember the kids were acting problems, and finally Karen was upset. She's not upset. Well, maybe she was, but she wasn't really happy. And so I said, well, I'll help you with this, okay? So I come in. Our laundry mat was on the ground floor level. I said, you go. I'll take care of the laundry. Because I'm sure I said it very nice. Honey, I loveth thee, my wifeth, and I knoweth that thou is haveth. Because we add the FTC at that time means more spiritual. And I said, I'll take care of this. And so she kindly left with just the sweetest spirit, I'm sure. And she walked around the corner, and I go like this. I go, because I was not happy, you know. And there's this big mirror right here. Now, the only thing worse than your wife being unhappy with not life is when she sees you doing the Italian thing, and she's walking around the corner, and she sees it in the mirror. That is called a long night, okay? So I'm just telling you, if you ever think about doing it, I just would get a Snickers bar and, not do it. All right, the fact is, we all have times like that, don't we? If you're honest. I mean, maybe not like that because you're just so smart, but you have times. Now, what do you do? All right, 3 things you do. Number 1, okay? First of all, look at Matthew chapter 5 and look at verse 23, okay? 5:23. Therefore, if thou bring thy gift to the altar, and there rememberest that thy brother hath aught against thee, leave there thy gift before the altar, and go thy way. First be reconciled to thy brother, and when thou come, and then come and offer thy gift. So letter A, when people are mad at me, I need to try to reconcile with them. I mean, people are upset with me. I can say, well, that's just your problem, but it's not just their problem. It's my problem too. Now, if I don't know about it, okay, if I ask somebody, is there anything wrong? And they say, nothing. When obviously there's something, but they're going to say nothing. You ever know anybody like that? Don't point fingers, but you ever know anybody? You say, what's wrong? Nothing, okay? Well, I've determined by God's grace, when they say nothing, I say, fine, okay? I'm not going to ask you. Sometimes I'll ask them twice, maybe 3 times. But there comes a point where I just stop asking. I said, when you want to get honest and right with God, come and talk to me. I don't really say it like that, but that's what I mean. And I say, okay. I said, what's wrong? They say nothing. But if I know it, okay, I need to try to reconcile. Let me give you 3 things to write down. To reconcile, based on this verse, I need to be attentive. In this case, this person was attentive and ascertained by whatever means available to them that there's a problem. Second, you have to be assertive. Not only attentive, but you have to be assertive. You've got to be the one to take the initiative. You can't sit over here and say, well, if you're mad at me and you want to solve this problem, you come over here. That's not what the verse says. The verse says I'm supposed to reach out to you, okay? If you're mad at me and I know about it, and I'm attentive and I have sensed it, I have to take the initiative to come to you. So that's not fair. They should come to me. Well, life's not fair and then you die. So don't worry about life being fair, okay? Just the right thing to do is to take the initiative, okay? Be attentive, to be assertive, okay? And the third, just keep it alliterated here, you need to be accurate. Accurate in what way? You need to deal with the problem at hand. When you have a conflict with somebody, one of the most damaging and biggest obstacles to overcome is there's a problem arises and you could deal with it, but when you're in the neighborhood, you bring in all these other superfluous things and wonder why you can't solve anything, okay? I mean, you can only swing at one pitch at a time, okay? Remember the story back in Acts chapter 6 when the widows were being neglected and the people were murmuring, okay? When the apostles got involved with it, they didn't preach one message, at least from the text, on murmuring. Well, they shouldn't have murmured. That's true, but they solved the problem at hand. The church could move on. You can't move on in a relationship if you try to solve every single problem in one moment. Deal with the problem at hand and then moveon.org. That's what you got to do. You got to just deal with the problem right there, okay? And that's what happens here. You got to try to reconcile, all right? Now, look at Proverbs chapter 15, okay? If someone's mad at me, I try to resolve the problem, okay? I try to confront them and try to reconcile, okay? Notice in the verse, there was no really focus on getting them to agree that you were right and they were wrong. The issue of who was right and who was wrong isn't part of the equation in Matthew chapter 5. It's just reconcile. And sometimes you have to agree to just disagree and move on, but you got to solve it, okay? Letter B, you have to measure your words, okay? Okay? Chapter 15 of Proverbs, chapter 15, verse 1. A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. So I've got to measure my words and make sure that the soft word is a thoughtful word, a word that is thought out and not exasperating the problem, okay? I had a good friend of mine years ago. He was very quiet in nature. We were just in the couples were getting together talking. And I told him, I called his name. I said, you know what? I've never seen you really get upset much. And his wife just looked and she grinned. She says, I know how to push his button. And evidently she was right. She says, I know how to push his button. I know exactly how to get them all stirred up. Okay? Now listen to me. If you know somebody, you got a close relationship with them, you probably know how to stir them up. But maybe when you're trying to resolve a problem and somebody's mad at each other, it's not the time to play that game and just say what you know is going to get them upset. Every time you say it, you know how they respond. And so in the midst of your anger, you say it. Because often when someone's mad at you and you don't deal with it properly, it often results in each party being mad at each other. And so you got to work that through. And then one more verse to help you in your thinking. Turn, if you would, to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. Now, I don't claim that this is all you should do. This is an exhaustive list, but it is at least a workable list to help you in your thinking and in my thinking when we try to deal with anger and when someone's mad at us, okay? Now, people are going to get mad at you, and you're going to get mad at other people. And when it happens, you got to deal with it, okay? If you don't deal with it, you have all kinds of problems, okay? 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, okay? Look at verse 14. It says, now we exhort you, brethren. Now he gives you 3 things to do. Warn, comfort, and support. Those are three things you're supposed to do. But you do each of them, particularly in relationship to where the other person is. Look at the verse. "And we exhort you, brethren, warn them that are" what? "Unruly." Okay? They're rebels. Okay? In other words, a rebel does not need to be comforted. They don't need to be supported. They need to be confronted. But then comfort the feeble-minded. That's a discouraged person. So you warn the rebel, you comfort the discouraged, and you help the person who's weak. Now, so let us see is you have to examine their condition. You have to examine their condition. Now, here's the reality about anger, okay? Anger is like water, okay? Have you ever had a problem with water coming in? For example, we had a problem one time downstairs with water coming to the basement apartment, and we couldn't figure out where it's coming from. Is it coming from over here, coming over here, coming over here? And the reality was, it was 3 stories up was the problem. We thought the problems were all over here, but trying to find, because water will find the path of least resistance. So the water might come down here, and then over here a little bit, and then down this way, and back over like this. It will find the path of least resistance to come out. When people are mad and angry, it is the same way. And here's what often happens. When someone blows up at you and is so angry with you, it is often because of something else going on in their life. I learned this early on in my ministry. If I'm in a deacon's meeting or a team meeting and somebody starts cocking an attitude about something, we're talking about something, and they just cock an attitude that's just really out of bounds about the thing. He used to trouble me. I said, "What's wrong? What did I do wrong? Why is this person this way?" And then after a couple of dozen times over an elongated time period, things happening like that, and me discovering that almost without exception, there was always something else going on in their life that they were upset with that they could not control. And so they express it some other way. That's what happens when people get mad with this at places of business. You know, that they have to wait a little bit, or maybe everything's not quite perfect, and they respond not with saying, "Well, this is not right, we need to fix it," or "May I speak to the manager?" But they become obnoxious about it. You know why they do? Because there's some other anger in their life that they haven't dealt with. So I've got to ask myself, when a person is mad at me, what's the problem here? Are they rebelling to God? Are they rebellious? Because it may not be anything I can do anything about. They may be mad at me, and there's nothing I can't help them, because they're rebelling to God, and they're mad at me because God won't do what they want him to do, or somebody else won't do what they want to do. I got to think it through, okay? So when people are mad, I've got to try to reconcile. I've got to measure my words. I've got to examine the condition of the person that is mad at me, okay? And understand what I can do and give them what they need. Maybe they need to be warned. Maybe I have to confront somebody who's mad at me. Maybe I've got to simply comfort them. Or maybe I have just to help them in some way, to give them some support. So if I think that through, I'll have wisdom to be able to determine God's will for my life, okay? Now, the last one, which is probably, if you're Italian, the most difficult one, being at peace with people who disagree with you, okay? I come from a long family line of people who had basically 2 opinions of every position. That was the right opinion. Everybody else's that was contrary to that was the wrong opinion. Do you know anybody like that? Who always thinks they're right, okay? Who thinks, I've got to be right because I'm an Italian. My last name is Facenda. I got to be right, okay? Now, you may not say it that way, but do you know anybody that acts like that, okay? And let me ask you a question. Is that a difficult person to deal with? who thinks they're always right? So how do you handle that? Well, not you. I mean, how would you recommend that somebody else handle it? Okay? How do you handle somebody who thinks they're always right? Yeah. Well, good luck on that one. Yeah, it might. In an intelligent family, where people talk, you sometimes just agree to disagree. That's certainly possible. What else? Anything else? How about just ducking, giving up? Say, yep, you're right. No, okay. I heard about a preacher one time, and true story. And somebody come to him to sort of criticize him. He said, "Well, so preacher, you preach too long." So, well, you're probably right. Preacher, you didn't preach long enough. Well, you're probably right. You preach too loud. Well, you're probably right. I preach too soft. Well, you're probably right. He just said, well, you may be right. He doesn't. You're probably right. You may be right. Okay, and he had learned that a person convinced against their will is what? Of the same opinion still. Okay, and who said that? What theologian said that? Really? No, not me. No, not. No. Oh, who said it? Do what? All right, that's your homework for Sunday, okay? Find out. Don't Google it right now, okay? Okay. I think it was Ben Franklin, but I could be wrong. I think it was Ben. Of course, Ben's like Moody. There's so many quotes associated with him, he probably didn't say half of them. But anyhow, that's what I heard. It was Ben Franklin, okay? But the fact is, you've got to learn to handle someone who simply disagrees with you, okay? Now, there is the Christian song that we're all familiar with. You got to know when to hold them, when to fold them, when to walk away, when to run. And that's true. You have to know how to respond to it, okay? So I want to give you some thoughts to help you with it, okay? Letter A, okay? Romans chapter 14. When you disagree, number A, accommodate the non-essentials. Accommodate the non-essentials. Now, look at Romans chapter 14, a very familiar passage, okay? He's talking here about the whole idea of how you may have differences of opinion among believers that, in the context here, are not essential, okay? They're not issues of the virgin birth, the bodily resurrection, the ministry of the Holy Spirit, and on you could go. Verse 1 says, "Him that is weak in the faith receive, but not the doubtful disputation. For one believeth that he may eat all things, another who is weak eateth herbs. Let not him that eateth despise him that eateth not. Let him that which eateth not judge him that eateth, for God hath received him. Who art thou that judgest another man's servant? To his own master he stands or falls, yea, he shall be holden up, for God is able to make him stand. One man esteems one day above another, and another esteems every day the like. Let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind." Now, he's not speaking here of biblical absolutes. He's not saying, well, if you want to be a gay Christian, you can be a gay Christian. If you want to be a whatever. No, he's not saying silliness like that. He is talking about things in which there is not a biblical mandate, okay? In which there are things that believers can disagree on, okay? And the focus here are things that the final analysis is that let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind, okay? That's like this whole virus thing, okay? We got advice, and this person said this, and this person says this, but we had to come to the determination how we were going to proceed and be fully persuaded that this was the way God would have us to proceed. Because we don't know what might happen. Somebody asked me, well, how would you feel if somebody came to church and then a week later winded up with the virus and died? I said, I'd feel really bad, obviously, okay? But discounting the fact that if you do pick up the virus, you don't really know where you get it from, okay? That's certainly true. But, okay, whatever happens, you got to be fully persuaded that you've done the right thing. Everybody has to decide for themselves. I mean, we developed, for example, in our household, we got the little hand sanitizer in the car, so we developed a habit. No matter what we do, we step out of the car, we step in the car, we do the hand sanitizer. We have certain things we do just so that we're fully persuaded that's what we should do. I'm not telling everybody else what they should do, but we're doing what we should do, okay? And what I have to understand is I've got to accommodate the non-essentials, okay? Number one, I got to accept the reality that not everybody is going to agree on everything, okay? No matter how convinced you might be that every Christian should, at least you think this is the thing a Christian should do, okay? If it's not dealt with in Scripture, okay, then you certainly have to accept the fact that the reality is not everybody's going to agree with you. But second, not only do you accept the reality, but second, you have to accept the accountability. And look at verse 6. He that regardeth the day regardeth it unto the Lord. He that regardeth not the day to the Lord, he doth not regard it. He that eateth, eateth to the Lord, for he giveth thanks. And he that eateth not, to the Lord he eateth not, and giveth God thanks. For none of us live to himself, and no man die to himself. For whether we live unto the Lord. Whether we die in the Lord. Whether we live, therefore, or die, we are the Lord's. Okay? For this end Christ hath both died and rose and revived, that he might be the Lord both of the dead and the living. Okay? All right, verse 11. As it is written, as I live, saith the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, every tongue shall confess to God. Now, the idea here is that we're accountable to God. I played an audience of one. If you don't like what I do, again, not talking about biblical guidelines, but if you don't like what I do, then I'm so sorry. Okay? And if I don't like what you do, I have to accommodate those disagreements. I will tell you, if you don't like Christmas decorations, you do not want to come to my house. Well, even now, because we have some out that are standing guard because of the virus, but some of the characters. But at Christmas time, you don't want to come to my house because you're not going to enjoy it. The 25,000 lights and the 75 characters and the 25 Christmas trees you're not going to enjoy that, okay? So I won't invite you to my house. I'll invite you in January and help me take it all down, okay? But you're not going to enjoy that, okay? All right? And that's fine. If you don't like it, don't like it. Go home and say it by yourself, whatever. But everybody has to make their choice, okay? I have to accept that, okay? But I've got to make sure that I'm doing what I sense God wants me to do, and so must you. So number one, I've got to accommodate the non-essentials, okay? Now, look at 1 Corinthians chapter 8. Now, just note that non-essential accommodation is on an individual basis, not on an institutional basis. There's a distinction there, okay? You can't run the Romans like Ken and I went off to Bible college back before electricity, or after electricity was created. And we go up to, so we're going to Tennessee Temple University in Chattanooga, Tennessee, okay? And so Karen and I had been dating for 3 years before we went, or 4 years before we went. And they sent me the rule book. The rule book was like bigger than the Bible. Not really, but it was a big rule book. It had a lot of different rules, okay? And most of them made no sense to me at all. You could walk together on the sidewalk at this time, but not this time, and this and that and the other. So after a year, we just got married. We couldn't handle it. We just couldn't figure it all out. But anyhow, the point is, when you join an institution, a Christian school, a church, whatever business, okay, you can't run over to Romans 14 and claim it. That's called unemployment. Because there is institutional expectations that you agree to before you join it, okay? So there's a difference there. Like when Paul had Timothy circumcised, not because Timothy didn't have the right to say, I don't want to be circumcised, but he was submitting for ministry's sake to that organized ministry that he was a part of, that missionary trip. And that's how you have to work that, okay? But that side note made, look at 1 Corinthians chapter 8 and look at verse 13. I accommodate the non-essentials by accepting the reality and accepting the accountability. But second, I give up the non-essentials when it is God's plan for my life. And look at 1 Corinthians chapter 8, and look at verse 13. I got to get to the right book, sorry about that. Okay, 8:13, okay? Wherefore, if meat make my brother to offend, I will eat no flesh while the world standeth, lest I make my brother to offend. So there are some times I just have to, it's not essential. So when you talk about agreeing to disagree, I just accept the fact, that's fine, it's not essential. We'll do it that way. It's just not worth fighting over. Now, Karen and I have been married this coming August 45 years, okay? So after 45 years of marriage, we have a saying in our household. We say, this close to death, why fight about it, okay? I mean, after 45 years, okay? You want to say, and, why, if you can just let it go. Why? And if you just take an attitude, a lot of conflict will just go away. You say, well, that's fine. You want to do it that way? That's fine, okay? And so if it's not essential, if I can give it up, and not worry about it, and not cock an attitude, not go to bed angry, okay, Ephesians 4, okay, so not that, but if I just let it go. That's that Christian song from Disney, right? Just let it go. Just let it go and say, that's fine, okay? It's not really a Christian song, I don't think, but I could be wrong on that one. But that's the point, okay? So just let it go, okay? Now, so first, I accommodate the non-essentials. So okay, that's fine, okay? Or I give up the non-essentials so that you can be, now watch this, go back to last Sunday morning's message on being kind. Remember that? All the way back to Sunday, okay? Okay, and the 5 characteristics of what is the character of kindness, okay? One is, I wouldn't ask you to say, well, let me just ask you, does anybody remember any of the 5? Anybody? I'll give you a free glass of water if you remember one of them, yes? It is, do what? The character of it, okay? It is the character of God. Yes, reflect the character of God, right? 4 others. Anybody? Bingo. Yes, you get 2 glasses of water. Yes. You make things easier. So kindness is making things easier. What was the other one? Making things better. You can all help with the cleanup at the church tonight, okay? So make things easier, make things better, have a right moral standard, okay? And that's all about being kind. And when I disagree with people, I need to be kind to them and give them a wide berth. People argue about stuff that 5 minutes from now is not going to matter. 5 years, probably even less, and in eternity, nothing. Not everything's that way. The virgin birth isn't that way. Okay, the bodily resurrection, Bible doctrine, and Bible absolutists are not, but if they're non-essential, you let them go. Okay. Now, one more thing. Look at Acts 15, then we'll land the plane. Okay. When I have a disagreement, I accommodate the non-essentials. I give up the non-essentials. If that makes peace, that's fine, because the world does not revolve around me. So if I can give it up and it creates peace between us, it's worth it. Who do you love and know that you really care for, that anything is worth it being at odds with them over? Again, when we're talking about non-essentials. Now, if they want to go off and sin, do the wrong thing, that's different, but just non-essentials. Not worth it, okay? But number letter C, I've got to adapt to the non-workable. Because the reality is that sometimes there is a disagreement in which you can't resolve it, or you're not going to resolve it, okay? And that's the passage here in Acts chapter 15, okay, in verses 36 to 41, okay? We've only got 4 minutes and 35 seconds, so we're going to land the plane. Quick descent here, okay? All right. I've got to understand that I've got to adapt to the non-workable. Verse 36, and the same day Paul said unto Barnabas, let's go and visit the churches. Great idea. Verse 37, Barnabas was determined to take John Mark, who was surnamed John Mark, and then 38, Paul says, no way, Jose. Now that's not really in the text, but that's what he says. It ain't going to happen, okay? Okay? And verse 39, the contention was so sharp, they had a Baptist business meeting, and they went different directions, okay? So that's what's happening. There's a break here, okay? Now, here's a note to think about, okay? When Paul is ending his life in 2 Timothy, who does he ask for? John Mark, okay? Now, when it's non-workable, okay, two things. You give up what cannot be kept. Write this down if you're taking notes. You give up what cannot be kept. But second, you keep what should not be given up. So you give up what cannot be kept. They could not work this out, so one went this way and one went that way. That could not, they couldn't stay together, okay? But you keep what shouldn't be given up. There was still a relationship, evidently. At the end, they come back together. So that you would assume the relationship is there. And though they could not agree at the moment, they did not throw, may I say this expression, the baby out with the bathwater, okay? So you have to give up what cannot be kept. So if you can't work it out, if you can't agree to be able to facilitate the two at that moment, and that can happen, by the way, in any relationship, okay? For example, you don't mind if I use an example about cleaning the bathrooms? You mind that? You want to talk about? You okay with that? Okay, fine. Remember this, guys. You never have an illustration until you ask your wife first. So that got to make sure. Okay. All right. So it used to be in our house. We have company. We still have company sometimes. We still have company, but we had company. Okay. So I don't know about maybe your house is always like the pictures in the magazines at the grocery store, and ours are too. Right before company shows up, at least the part the company's going to see. Now, it's not that it's not that way. It is some that way other times, but not quite that well usually. Anyway, but that's the point. All right, so we say, well, what are you going to clean? What am I going to clean? Okay? All right, so I'm going to clean this room. Okay? Now, I can always ace the kitchen. I'm a good kitchen cleaner. If you need me to come and clean your kitchen, I hire out. I'm cheap. Okay? I can clean the kitchen. But this time, I had the bathrooms. Okay, I know, the bathrooms, that's the tough one, you know. And so I clean the bathrooms, okay? And so then I go, and then Karen comes, and she cleans the bathroom, okay? Now, you know why she cleaned the bathrooms? I did a really bad job, evidently, okay? Which I'm sure I did, right? Right? Yeah, I know. Well, no, don't seem happy, okay? So I will tell you, that doesn't work for me at all. At all. Because for me, it was a sacrifice of love. I cleaned the bathroom, okay? So we had to agree to have a different approach. What was not going to work was for me to clean the bathrooms because they weren't going to be up to the right standard, and that's fine. So she puts me in the kitchen, which I'm fine with, okay? Because our rule is if you clean it, unless the person asks for your opinion, you accept the gift, and you move on. Because the folks who are coming aren't really that important anyhow. That's sort of our theory about it, okay? Because we're the ones that live there, okay? And not that they're not important, but they're not important as the two sitting right there, because we're the ones that live there all the time. See what I'm saying? All right, so, that probably didn't say that right, but you know what I mean, okay? So, the point is, you got to figure out the deal, okay? So what we couldn't give up was, we weren't going to like get two houses, okay? Or stop having company. So we had to figure it out, okay? So that's free tonight. I won't charge you extra for that, okay? All right, so that's how you get. So let me ask you a question. Here's a question, people around you. Are you a peacemaker? Are you somebody who is seeking to make peace continually in your family, in your marriage, with your children, with your friends, in your church? Or are you always the one causing the problem? Or are you the one that gets stubborn and just will not deal with it? There is nothing spiritual about being stubborn when you're being stubborn because you're selfish.